Hello, I'm Tracy Nicholas, and welcome to Folkloring. I am a passionate folklore practitioner, and to me, folkloring is more than just a podcast. It's my commitment to help you connect with your roots and awaken the wisdom within you. Welcome to this episode of Folkloring, and today I'm going to talk all about dark goddesses, some of the symbolism behind them. I'm going to get into a few different dark goddesses and tell you about them specifically. And then at the end, of course, we'll be talking about the folkloring part of it, and I'll tell you about how you can work with some of these dark goddesses and what benefits that you can have if you do so. But before I get into all of that, I'm going to tell you how I've been folkloring lately. It is coming on spring here, and so I decided to do a couple of things. It's not quite time to clean the leaves out of the yard yet because the pollinators are all still underground. They need the leaf coverage. But I did realize that I had not yet cleaned and packaged up my dried herbs from the end of last season. And so knowing that stuff is going to be coming up soon, I decided to do that. And so I did that. I spent a Friday night getting that done. It was lots of fun, played some music and got that done. And the other thing that I did, although I'm not cleaning up the yard in general, I cleaned around where my ferns come up. I cleaned all of the dead foliage from last year away because I am anxiously awaiting for the fiddleheads to come up because they're so delicious. I love them so much. So, okay, dark goddesses. A dark goddess is a goddess who has challenging aspects to her. And these aspects often have to do with death, the underworld, or some kind of punishment. Now, they're very powerful, at least the ones I'm talking about are powerful, but they can be really destructive. And they can control these situations through a primordial energy, which can be either emotional or environmental. And they often bring a lot of chaos. Now, the interesting part about them is very, very often they have either a dual kind of light-dark aspect to them, or sometimes they're a triple goddess. And I'll get into a couple of the different goddesses that do have those aspects when I talk about the specific ones that I'm going to go through today. Now, some of the symbolism of a dark goddess and what you would want to be thinking about when you're considering whether or not you want to use that symbolism in whatever ritual you do or in your day-to-day life. Working with a dark goddess can help you focus on transformation and even do shadow work, right? Now, as people, we avoid pain whenever possible. So it does make sense that over time, people really started to avoid working with dark goddesses. But the dark goddess can do things like cut through the darkness that causes toxic societies, toxic relationships. They can help you uncover what you're hiding from yourself, what's in your subconscious that you're not admitting to yourself. They can help you when you're trying to tear down behaviors and habits and beliefs that no longer serve you. Now, it can be painful, which is that dark goddess part, but it ultimately, when you do that kind of painful work, it benefits you. You grow and you change, right? And they can also help with sort of, that rebirth that you feel when you do that deep work. Because, you're destroying old parts of you, and that is, painful. It feels like a death of part of you. And so, in order to move forward, though, we need to really have that death of part so we can recreate ourselves and our lives. So when we meet a dark goddess, there are no guarantees who we're going to be at the end of our journey. And that can be very scary. We have no guarantees on how it's going to go. It could be really, really painful. There could be small pain. We could not recognize ourselves. We might lose friends and family because we're transforming and they're not. So dark goddess work is challenging work. And the dark goddesses rule over things that we fear the most. And sort of the trade-off there is a dark goddess will offer us growth and wisdom in exchange for the pain that we go through working with them. Now, when we think about the goddesses, the goddesses and the gods, they're not our divine heavenly parents, right? They care about us and aspects of our lives, but they also have sort of their own agendas and have a much different picture of what's important and what's not. And so when you're using the symbolism of a dark goddess, you can't really apply human expectations to them, or even moralities, really. And I think that when you work with dark gods, that it's much clearer. This point is much clearer than when you're, working with the love and light kind of, everything's gonna, be great kind of gods and goddesses. Because it's much clearer that you need to not only develop a relationship with them if you're going to work with the dark gods, but you have to understand that things might happen that are unexpected. And so some of the folklore that builds up around the idea of dark gods is really rooted in sort of these changes and, growth that we experience throughout our lives. And we don't have a lot in our modern society. We don't have a lot of really great transition kind of lore. We have, like Jewish people have bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs, but we don't have much other coming of age. And people get married, and then we have funerals when we die. And so there are some things that we mark, but for the vast majority of our adult lives, we really don't have anything that celebrates kind of our growth as people. And I think that when you look at the stories of some of these dark goddesses, that you'll see that it can help to really look at what it is that as you go through life, where you're changing and where you're growing and learning. So that's just some of the symbolism. Now I'm going to get into specific goddesses. The first goddess that I want to talk about is Hecate. And I want to talk about her first because she's just so wildly popular. Lots of people work with her and tap into her power. Now, Hecate comes from Greek mythology, and she is the goddess of magic, witchcraft, the moon, the night, spirits, crossroads, and of necromancy. Now, interestingly, as I was saying earlier, there's often sort of this dual aspect to dark goddesses that are, some light, some dark. And Hecate is consequently associated with both poison and medicine. And she's associated with necromancy, but she's also a healer. And she's associated with the underworld, but also with childbirth. She can be gentle and nourishing, but she can also be very harsh. And so she can appear as a black dog, a polecat, or a serpent. And depending on what the exact myth is, she's either a goddess of duality or she can sometimes be considered a triple goddess. So she's a goddess of the crossroads, and she's present in life-changing times like death, birth, and rebirth. So it may be a crossroads of your life instead of a literal crossroads, though it could be that too. Now, she's associated with witchcraft and the night and darkness. So a lot of practitioners, witches, people who do ritual, call to her to aid them in their work. Another part of the story of Hecate is that she watches battles on the battlefield, and she's the one that determines who she'll grant victory to. So she's deciding kind of who lives and who dies, really. However, she's also the goddess that helped Demeter search for Persephone by shining a light on her. So if you sort of follow that symbolism, she can help you to illuminate your subconscious self if you are working with her in that way. And they say that when a person makes a sacrifice, they are said to invoke the power of Hecate herself. Now, some of the symbols that you could use if you decide you want to work with Hecate, the crossroads, obviously, and as I said, it could be 2 roads or 3 roads at the crossroads, depending on the myth. Torches, so she's illuminating. So for guidance, if you're looking for guidance, that might be a good symbol to use. Keys are associated with her because, of course, she can come and go from the underworld, and so she has access. Daggers can be used to show her ritual power to use in ritual. And labyrinth is a good symbol to use with her. And the reason for the labyrinth is because in a lot of stories, when people go into a labyrinth, they have to find their way through, and they have to sometimes go through a great challenge before they can reemerge. So it's a metaphor for rebirth. Now, the triple moon is often used as a symbol associated with her when we're talking about the triple goddess aspect, and also the dark moon. So if you're doing ritual on the new moon, you may want to use some of Hecate's power to work with you. The next goddess I want to talk about is Bridget. And Bridget is, in Irish lore, she is the great mother goddess. Now, when you look to Christianity, she was Saint Bridget of Kildare. She has a bunch of names: the Exalted One, the Bright One, Fiery Arrow, Lady of the Sacred Flame, Flame of Inspiration, Mistress of the Mantle, as in your mantle at home. And she is the goddess of fertility and spring, which sounds awesome, right? She is also a triple goddess, and the different aspects of her triple goddess are the Lady of Healing Waters, Goddess of the Sacred Flame, and Goddess of the Fertile Earth. And she can manifest as either a maiden, mother, or crone. Right? Now, Bridget has 3 sort of earthly interests, which are poetry, smith crafting, and healing. Now, she is a wife and a mother, though she's also sometimes shown as like a warrior maiden. Now, Bridget is really important because she is the goddess of aspects of daily life, right? So things that were important to people, such as smith crafting and motherhood. So, and we have lots of stories about things that are important to us to, maintain society, stay alive, that kind of thing. Now, because she's a goddess of spring, her fire is what was believed to get people through the dark days of winter. And she is the tender of the sacred flame and the goddess who ushers in spring. She is the goddess of poetry, the arts, the hearth, fertility, motherhood, and medicine and healing. And throughout history, Irish people would pray to Bridget in order to get through the winter. She kept the fires burning. That kept the animals alive. And also they would pray to her to have enough food to last through the winter. So that all sounds fantastic, right? But I included her in the dark goddesses because she's really at her prime in the winter, right? She is at her peak. And she's also the goddess of fire. And so again, that concept of shining a light into the dark aspects of your life, the hidden and the obscured, even to yourself. And so that's why I included her in this. Now, she does help with protection of children. She helps with fertility. You can use her if you're doing some fire magic, healing magic, any kind of purification, and childbirth. Now, because she rules the elements of fire and water, she can assist with candle spells or scrying spells if you want to use a mirror or a bowl of water. She teaches you to let go of the past and to make space for new beginnings. And you'll start to see this theme where this idea of rebirth is tied to sort of these painful ways that you move through your learning in life. A little bit of symbolism that we can use. Now, Imbolc is an especially powerful time to work with Bridget because this is obviously a spring festival, and Bridget ushers in the spring. And so a lot of people will weave Bridget's crosses at this time in order to honor her. And then they hang them by the front door to protect from fire and evil. And the reason that people do this is part of Bridget's story is that Bridget was weaving to pass the time this exact form of a cross while she watched over her father on his deathbed. So that's why people do that. Some people will make a Bridget's doll on Imbolc, and it is displayed in sort of a makeshift bed next to the fireplace because, the eternal flame, she's associated with fire, and that would be symbolized by the flame. She also is represented by the serpent, which represents renewal with the shedding of the skin. And so that's associated with the beginning of spring, the return of life, because it's sort of that idea that when the skin is shed, it's almost like a rebirth for the snake. Next up, I want to talk about Deer Woman. And Deer Woman is a goddess of the Eastern Woodlands and Central Plains tribes in North America. The Potawatomi, the Creek, the Omaha, the Ponca tribes. And Deer Woman is associated with fertility and love. Now, sometimes she's depicted in animal form, other times in human form, and sometimes it's a mixture between the two, and that usually looks like a woman's body and face with antlers and 2 cloven feet. Now, sometimes she's considered a benign spirit who might help women conceive children, but she is also a trickster. And she punishes wicked men. She seduces adulterous or promiscuous men and either leads them to their deaths or leaves them in the woods to pine away from lovesickness for her. So she punishes men that have hurt women. Now, it is said that she might trample incautious people to death, especially girl-crazy young men or disobedient children. So she's really got a thing for lusty men. Now, if you're worried about it, look at your behavior first. But if you're really worried about it, you can banish Deer Woman with the use of tobacco and chanting. And spells that she casts, if she casts a spell against you, they can be broken by looking at her cloven feet. Right? Now, a sighting of her, if you just happen to see Deer Woman and you don't run into her and she doesn't target you, that can be a warning of a sign of personal transformation. So again, that rebirth, it just keeps coming up. Now, the last reported sighting of Deer Woman was in Oklahoma in 2007. So you guys, it wasn't that long ago. Watch yourselves. And if you're tempted to do something morally wrong, Deer Woman is going to come and remind you to choose carefully, make good choices. Next up is Circe. And this is from Greek mythology, and she is a dark goddess of sorcery. Now, her mother was an ocean nymph, and she's sometimes associated with Hecate. She lived on an island and befriended a lot of wild animals on that island, including lions and wolves. And while on the island, she was practicing her magic and developed powers because she had the isolation and she had the time to work on it. Now, she will help with issues of loneliness, isolation, cleansing, individuality, acceptance, loss, and once again, transformation. Now, she taught herself how to be an expert in plant magic. So she learned on the island about plants and their healing properties and the magic that you can do with them. So if you're going to be working with her, you're probably going to want to use some various plants. Now, she has the ability to transform people. If you look at Homer's Odyssey, she turns men into pigs on her island after drinking her wine. So a little bit of a warning against overindulgence, again, bad choices. Now, if you're in a bad place, this is the goddess to call on because she went through a lot. She was isolated on the island. The gods threw a lot of different stuff at her, and she was able to adapt and survive and thrive, even when it felt like things were impossible. She's also skilled in necromancy, prophecy, and illusion. Her favorite tools to use are first the loom, and she often would, quote unquote, weave her spells, and also a cup for potions that she would make with these herbs. And she's also associated with the blade and the wand. She likes those as well. So that's kind of your standard setup for a good ritual. Now, when you want to call on her, it's when you need to speak the truth, even if it's to yourself. So again, illuminating what's dark inside us. And all these goddesses have this same commonality between them. And so she can help you tear down the structures, your beliefs, things that no longer serve you so you can become the best version of yourself, which once again is that rebirth idea. Next up is Kali. And this is from the Hindu tradition. She is a goddess of death and destruction, but also a creator goddess. So again, those sort of two sides of the coin. Now, she is a fearsome warrior goddess, and she kills demons. She typically is shown as a blue woman with between 4 and 10 arms. And in those hands, she carries either severed heads or a sword. So it's one or the other. So she is a frightening image. Now, the reason that she looks this way is mainly to scare off evil, because she is there to provide cleansing energy to the land and rinsing it of filth. So she represents empowerment, bravery, fortitude, courage, and you call on her when you need protection from evil. And she, again, represents self-empowerment and transformation, because if she needs to, she will burn your life to the ground, but it's for your highest good. So again, that rebirth idea. She helps you dissolve all of sort of your beliefs and the forms that don't serve you, so you can rebuild your life from the ground up. And that's one of the reasons that I included her with the dark goddess, is because she can be very destructive on this path to good. But, she destroys beliefs about yourself, like you're not worthy, or you're not valuable, or you don't belong, right? She helps you to be your authentic self and find meaningful love for yourself while you have to live in reality. So she can be very difficult to work with, but the benefits are really powerful if you choose to do that. Next, I'm going to talk about Freya. And again, she has a lot of different names. She's called the Giver, the Sea Brightener, or the one who makes the sea swell, Lady of the Slain, the Shaker, Goddess of the Veneer, Goddess of Love, Goddess Beautiful in Tears. And that last one is because when upset, Freya would weep tears of gold. And when she was searching for her lost husband, she was weeping tears of red gold. So she is the Norse goddess of love, fertility, and sex. But she also embodies death, witchcraft, and war. Now, she is the goddess of witches, and she possesses powerful magic. She's known for shapeshifting, divination with runes, and exploring the dark side of things. And the modern Scandinavian word for Friday in Swedish, Norwegian, and Danish, that word means Freya's day. So she's associated with Friday. Now, she rules over the paradise field of Folkvangar, which is the field of the people or the field of the army, which is where half the warriors who die in battle go to, right? Now, I'm sure many of you have heard of Valhalla, and that's this big hall in which warriors who die in battle go and party for eternity. But there is another place that they go, like I say, half of them go, and the field of Folkvangar is a place where the warriors go and they lay down and they slumber and rest for eternity. So she is quite literally a Valkyrie, and that name means the one who chooses the slain in Old Norse. And it's even said that she may be the leader of the Valkyries. Symbolism that goes with her is a chariot, right? And so it's a chariot, not just a chariot that's drawn by cats that are either gray or blue. And the chariot was given to her by Thor. Now, I heard in some stories they're saying that she rides that chariot into battle, but in other stories that I saw, they said that she actually rides a boar. So that's another symbolic item that is associated with her. And they call the boar a battle pig. So another thing is a coat of falcon feathers. And she uses that coat to shapeshift into a falcon. So if you're going to be doing any work with her, you might want to use a feather. And she also has a very specific necklace. And I hope I don't butcher this. It's Brisingamen. And at one point, she slept with 4 different dwarves to procure this necklace. She learned of this beautiful necklace, and she decided she absolutely must have it. But the dwarves didn't wish to part with the necklace because it was priceless. But the 5 of them came to an agreement that Freya would lay with each for a day and a night. And in doing so, she claimed her prize of her necklace. Unfortunately for Freya, Odin enlisted the aid of the trickster god Loki to steal the necklace away from her. After all that work, Loki transformed himself into a fly, and he found a little gap that allowed him to get into Freya's enchanted home. Now, he found his way to Freya's chambers, but he was a fly, so he was unable to remove the necklace without waking her up. So he turned himself into a flea, he bit Freya, she moved her hand to unconsciously slap away at him, and then that gave him the opportunity to get the necklace without waking her up. Now, this story ends in a couple of different ways. Many of them with Freya demanding the necklace back from Odin, and Odin demanding some impossible task or an act of repentance for her lack of fidelity to her husband, because she was out there sleeping with the dwarves. Evidently, she did get it back at some point through whatever method it was, because she lent the necklace to Thor to complete his disguise in the tale of Thrym and the Stolen Hammer, when Thor dressed up as Freya and pretended to want to marry Thrym. And so that apparently that necklace was enough to make that cross-dressing believable. So finally, I'm going to get to the Morrigan. And The Morrigan also has lots of names. There's the Great Queen, the Celtic goddess of death, the Queen of the Triple Goddesses, Morrigu, the Great Queen Goddess Morrigan, and of course simply the Morrigan. And this is an Irish Celtic goddess of war, destruction, death, and transformation. She's often depicted on a battlefield surrounded by crows, and she has the ability to shift into the shape of different animals in different forms, including a bull, a crow, a wolf, an old witch, or a warrior queen. Now, when she would transform into a crow, she would fly overhead during battle, crowing and shrieking to frighten the warriors. She is the goddess of prophecy and witchcraft, and she is fierce in person, but again, she also represents things hidden and illusions, and we get back to that idea of hiding things from ourselves and finding our authentic self. So she is a triple goddess, and she has 3 different forms, and as opposed to the maiden mother crone that you see so often when you're talking about triple goddesses. And again, I hope I don't butcher this. It's Badba the crow, Macha the great queen, and Nemain the crone. So slightly different than the normal story. She's also associated, because she is a triple goddess, with the number 3, and symbols for her might be the triskelion, which is sort of a 3-legged triple spiral, but also the triquetra, which is 3 corners, and it's formed with 3 interlacing arcs, right? And if you happen to be out and about and you see a crow or some ravens, that might be the Morrigan calling out to you. Now, the Morrigan teaches us that light comes out of dark. And she, as in her crow form, eats the skin off of dead warriors after a battle. But, she also represents the circle of life in that way. So again, there's good, there's bad in all of these goddesses. So now I'm going to get to some folkloring, and I'm going to talk about some of the symbolism of these different goddesses, how you can use it, whether it be in any sort of ritual that you're doing or just in your day-to-day life, or, just any sort of personal transformative work, and how you can sort of bring these into what you're doing fairly easily. Now, first thing that I want to say when we're talking about dealing with deities, you want to treat deities with respect, right? You want to build a relationship with them before asking them for stuff, because that's just rude. And this is particularly important with the dark goddesses because you don't want things to go bad when you're working with them, right? Like, it can be pretty disastrous if you anger them or upset them in some way. So I'll go through just a couple of these goddesses that I talked about and different things you can do. Now, if you're going to work with Freya, some offering ideas for you would be mead, honey, wine, chocolate, cat figures, and jewelry. And also, if you have some sort of representation of that battle pig, I think you can do that too. So the Morrigan, now, if you're going to work with the Morrigan, you can use stormwater, right? Because she is, a very destructive force. Crow feathers, a knife, milk, grain, honey, anything that represents relics of war. The crow, you can use red beans, red meat, red wine, traditional Irish foods, and I'm not going to get into what those are because y'all have Pinterest. You can figure that out. And mead and red food in general. And obviously red food because of the symbolism of blood. So if you're going to work with Kali, you can contact Kali through meditation. And if you're going to do it through meditation, you can do it by performing the goddess yoga squat, the asana, and meditate that way. You can do it by performing tantric rites, and hey, no judgment there. If that's what pumps up your power, I'm not here to kink shame. Or by offering red hibiscus flowers or sweets or rice and lentils. Now, Hecate, interestingly, if you're going to make offerings to her, you're going to look at almonds, garlic, roses, mugwort, frankincense, plums, dates, cakes that are round, and belladonna and hemlock. But of course, be very careful if you're going to use those because they are poisonous. And again, anything blood-colored, anything red. So, and that goes without saying what that's about. Now, Circe would, if you want to engage with plant spirits or do animal work or need to face a truth, right? If you're going to work with her for that, you can use mandrake, juniper, nightshades, and if there's some sort of medicinal plant that is specifically used for whatever the question it is that you're asking or thinking about, you can also use animal figurines and wine. Now, Bridget enjoys sort of traditional prayers, candle offerings, small oil lamp lit for her, spoken or written poetry, milk, grain, and of course the St. Bridget's cross, if you want to weave one of those. And like I said, if you're working with her, the best time to do that is in the spring at Imbolc. Now, you might want to make a Bridget's doll, right? And you can use images of symbolism that relate to her, like the serpent, the eternal flame, maybe some wells. So that is the dark goddesses, at least it's some of the dark goddesses. And there are so many goddesses that are considered sort of having a dark aspect to them. And I did some of the more popular ones. There are a lot that are much less well known. And so if you are interested in this topic, if you want me to do another follow-up episode to this of sort of the less well-known dark goddesses, I would love to have you let me know. You can either let me know over on Blue Sky, where I'm at the Folkloring Podcast, or it's just Folkloring Podcast, or you can shoot me an email. So thanks again for listening, and happy folkloring. As always, thanks for listening to Folkloring. If you liked what you heard, please consider leaving a rating and review, and don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you never miss an episode. If you have any questions or comments, or would like to suggest a topic for a future episode, please email us at folkloringpod@gmail.com or message us on Facebook or Instagram. Other places you can find me are at the Folklore Podcast as the theater, film, and storytellers correspondent, or creating folklore-inspired games at madmenandheroes.com. Stay curious, stay connected, and keep the traditions alive. And I hope that wherever you are, folklore is making your life more magical.